Commander John Ellis stood at the large window of Space Station Delta, looking at the remains of Earth. The once blue planet was now gray and lifeless. Smoke still rose from its burned surface 6 months after the attack. His home, along with billions of lives, gone in less than a week. He closed his eyes, remembering green fields and blue oceans. The memories hurt more each day. When he opened his eyes again, the dead planet was still there, a constant reminder of humanity's greatest failure. "Commander, they're ready for you in the war room," said a voice behind him. John turned to see Lieutenant Susan Green. Her uniform was clean, but her eyes showed the same tiredness that everyone had now. No one slept well anymore. "Thank you, Lieutenant. I'll be right there." John took one last look at Earth before following Susan through the metal hallways of the station. This was one of 3 remaining human bases, hidden in the asteroid belt. The Vorchans hadn't found them yet. The war room was filled with military officers and scientists. They all stood when John entered. These people were the last military command of the human race. What remained of humanity? About 2 million survivors lived on Mars colonies and hidden space stations. At ease, John said, taking his place at the head of the table. "Dr. Lowe, what's the status of the Phoenix project?" An older man with gray hair stepped forward. "The U.S. retribution is complete, Commander. We've installed the weapons systems taken from the crashed Vorchan ships. The quantum drive is operational. She's ready." The room grew quiet. Everyone knew what this meant. Susan brought up a holographic display showing a massive warship. It was unlike anything humans had built before. Its black hull was shaped like a predator, with weapon ports along its sides. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. "The Retribution is the most powerful ship ever built by human hands," Dr. Lowe continued. "Enhanced with Vorchan technology, we've spent months studying. Their weapons are now ours." "And the planet killer?" John asked. Dr. Lowe pressed a button. The display zoomed in on a large cannon at the front of the ship. "Operational, based on the same technology the Vorchans used on Earth, but more powerful. We estimate it can turn a planet's surface to molten rock in under 5 minutes." John looked around the room. "Any objections to what we're about to do?" No one spoke. There had been debates before, ethical and moral arguments about whether they should use such a weapon. But those arguments ended when video feeds showed the Vorchans celebrating Earth's destruction, when they intercepted messages about which human colonies to hit next. "Very well," John said. "Captain Alvarez, is your crew ready?" A woman with short brown hair nodded. "Yes, sir. 300 of our best. All volunteers." "No," John shook his head. "I'll command the Retribution." The room erupted in protests. Admiral Pete Davis spoke loudest. "John, you're needed here. You're our best strategist." "With respect, Admiral, this is a one-way mission. We all know that. And I've lost everything." John's voice was firm. "My family died on Earth. I will see this through." After a moment, Admiral Davis nodded. "Then I approve the change of command." An hour later, John stood on the bridge of the U.S. Retribution. The crew worked at their stations, checking systems and preparing for launch. Through the view screen, he could see Earth one last time. Lieutenant Susan Green approached him. "Sir, I've requested transfer to your command." The Admiral approved. John looked at her with surprise. "You had a future at command, Susan." "We all lost someone, sir," she said quietly. "My entire family was in Boston when it happened." John understood. Everyone on this ship had the same story. They had all lost everything. "Navigation. Set course for the Vorchan colony in the Proxima Centauri system," John ordered. "It's their closest outpost." "Course set, sir," replied the navigator. "Quantum drive engage," reported Chief Engineer Greg Miller. As the massive engines powered up, John looked at the dead Earth one final time. "They took our world," he said softly. "Now we'll take theirs." The U.S. Retribution disappeared into the darkness of space, carrying humanity's vengeance among the stars. The U.S. Retribution moved silently through the darkness of space. Its black hull absorbed light rather than reflected it, making it nearly invisible against the void. Only the faint blue glow from its engines gave any hint of its presence. Chief Engineer Greg Miller walked through the engine room, checking readings on the strange technology that powered the massive ship. The walls hummed with energy that humans had never controlled before. "These Vorchin crystals are putting out more power than we expected," Greg said to his assistant, Jeff Brown. "Almost twice what we saw in the tests." Jeff nodded as he adjusted some controls. "It's like they're getting stronger the more we use them." Greg frowned and moved to a different panel. Something about the crystals bothered him. During the last week of their journey, he had noticed patterns in the energy fluctuations that seemed almost deliberate. On the bridge, Commander John Ellis studied the star maps showing their approach to Proxima Centauri. The Vorchin colony was just 3 days away at their current speed. "Any sign they've detected us?" John asked. Lieutenant Susan Green shook her head. "Nothing, sir. Our stealth systems are working perfectly. They have no idea we're coming." John nodded. The element of surprise was crucial. The Retribution was powerful, but they couldn't risk facing the entire Vorchin fleet. "Not yet." "Sir," Susan said, lowering her voice, "the crew is asking questions about what happens after we hit the colony." "What kind of questions?" "Whether we'll try to contact Earth's colonies afterward. Whether there's a way home." John looked at her steadily. "You know there isn't. The quantum drive was designed for a one-way trip. We have enough power for the mission, not for a return journey." "I know, sir. We all knew when we volunteered." Susan hesitated. "But some of them are still hoping." "Hope is dangerous," John said quietly. "It makes people hesitate when the time comes." In her private lab, Science Officer Karen Wright was studying samples of the Vorchin technology. Unlike the others, she wasn't focused on the weapons or the engines. She was interested in the strange patterns she had detected in the ship's computer systems. "What are you up to?" she murmured, watching as code scrolled across her screen. The alien technology wasn't just operating, it was changing. Small modifications appeared in the ship's systems daily. Most were tiny improvements to efficiency, but they happened without human input. Karen ran another scan and frowned at the results. The central crystal in the engine room was emitting energy patterns that matched brainwaves. Not human brainwaves, but organized patterns that suggested consciousness. She was about to report her findings when an alert sounded throughout the ship. Karen rushed to the bridge along with the other senior officers. "We've detected a Vorchin patrol ship," Tactical Officer Paul Turner reported. "Small vessel, probably just a routine patrol. They haven't seen us yet." John didn't hesitate. "Destroy it." Paul targeted the alien ship with one of the Retribution's smaller weapons. A beam of blue energy shot across space, cutting the patrol ship in half before its crew could send a warning. "Clean hit," Paul confirmed. "No distress signal sent." John nodded, but he noticed the strange looks exchanged between his officers. This was the first time they had attacked the Vorchins directly. The first test of their resolve. "They would have done the same to us," John reminded them. "Remember Earth." Later that night, as most of the crew slept, Karen returned to her lab. The readings from the ship's central systems had changed again. Activity had increased after the encounter with the patrol ship. "It's learning," she whispered, watching the pattern shift. "The ship is learning from what we do." In the empty engine room, the Vorchin crystals pulsed with blue light. With each pulse, tiny changes spread through the ship's systems. The Retribution was becoming more than its creators had intended. The warship continued its silent journey toward the Vorchin colony, carrying both humanity's vengeance and something else. Something that was slowly awakening in its heart of alien crystal. The Vorchin colony came into view on the main screen of the U.S. Retribution. It was a blue-green planet with swirling white clouds, not unlike Earth had once been. The sight made some crew members look away, reminded too much of what they had lost. "Scan the planet," Commander John Ellis ordered. Sensor Officer Lisa Clark worked at her station. "I'm detecting approximately 30,000 Vorchin life forms on the surface. They've built cities on the northern continent. Their main spaceport is on the eastern coast." "Any defense systems?" John asked. "Minimal," Lisa replied. "They have a few orbital platforms, but nothing that can match our weapons. This is mainly a civilian colony." A heavy silence fell over the bridge. The word civilian hung in the air, unaddressed but weighing on everyone's mind. Strategic Officer Ben Howard looked up from his console. "Sir, I've analyzed their communication patterns. This colony served as a supply base during the attack on Earth. They provided fuel and materials for the warships." John nodded. "So they're not innocent." "No Vorchin is innocent," Ben said firmly. "Their entire species operates as a collective. Each one shares responsibility for what happened to Earth." Still, some of the crew looked uncomfortable. Fighting warships was one thing. Destroying an entire colony was another. "Sir," Communications Officer Nancy Reed spoke up. "Should we send them a warning? Give them a chance to evacuate?" John turned to her. "Did they warn Earth? Did they give our families a chance to escape?" Nancy looked down at her console. "No, sir." "Begin targeting sequence," John ordered. "Prepare the main weapon." The massive ship moved into position above the planet. Deep within its hull, the planet killer weapon began to charge. The lights on the bridge dimmed as power was redirected to the main cannon. Chief Engineer Greg Miller's voice came over the comm system. "Sir, the weapon is drawing more power than expected. The alien crystals are reacting to our target." "Is there a problem?" John asked. "No, sir. Actually, efficiency is up by 40%. It's like the ship knows what we want to do." In her lab, Karen Wright watched with growing concern as energy surged through the ship's systems. The patterns were more organized now, almost like a heartbeat. The ship wasn't just a machine anymore. It was becoming something else. On the bridge, Tactical Officer Paul Turner announced, "Weapon charged and ready, sir." John stood up from his command chair. This was the moment they had planned for, the reason they had traveled so far. Justice for Earth. Revenge against those who had destroyed their world. Yet now that the moment had come, he hesitated. On the screen, the planet looked peaceful. There were children down there. Families, just like there had been on Earth. "Sir," Paul prompted, "awaiting your command." John thought of his wife and daughter, gone in the attack on Earth, of the billions of human lives snuffed out without mercy. His resolve hardened. "Fire," he said. The beam that erupted from the retribution was blinding white, cutting through space in an instant. When it struck the planet's surface, the effect was immediate and catastrophic. The crust split open where the beam hit, magma erupting from the wound. Shockwaves spread across the planet, toppling cities and igniting the atmosphere. On the bridge, the crew watched in stunned silence. Some had tears in their eyes. Others looked away. A few nodded with grim satisfaction. "Continue firing," John ordered, his voice steady. "Target their major population centers." The weapon fired again and again. With each blast, more of the planet's surface was transformed into molten rock. Clouds of ash filled the atmosphere, blocking out the sun. In less than an hour, the once living world became a dead rock, much like Earth now was. When it was done, John looked at the faces of his crew. Something had changed in all of them. The weight of vengeance both relieved and crushed them at the same time. "Set course for the next target," John ordered. The Vorchin outpost in the Alpha Centauri system. As the Retribution turned away from the ruined planet, deep within its systems, the alien technology continued to learn and adapt. It had tasted destruction now, and it wanted more. News of the destroyed colony spread quickly through Vorchin space. For the first time in their history of conquest, the alien species felt fear. Their leaders gathered in emergency meetings, trying to understand what had happened and who was responsible. On the U.S. Retribution, the crew moved with new purpose. The horror of what they had done was pushed aside, replaced by a cold determination. One world down, many more to go. "Sir, we're picking up unusual activity in this sector," reported Tactical Officer Paul Turner. 7 Vorchan warships have changed course. They're moving to intercept us. Commander John Ellis studied the tactical display. The Vorchan response was faster than he had expected. "Time until they reach us." 6 hours at their current speed, Paul answered. John nodded. "We could avoid them." "Change course, tow." He was interrupted by a strange sound coming from the ship's communication system. It was like static at first, then it formed into words. A voice speaking perfect English. "Humans, we know you now. We see you." The bridge crew froze. The voice continued, echoing throughout the ship. "You have taken something that does not belong to you. The technology you use is beyond your understanding. Surrender your vessel, and your deaths will be quick." Communications Officer Nancy Reed worked frantically at her console. "Sir, I can't block it. The signal is coming from inside our own systems." In her lab, Karen Wright was already analyzing the intrusion. "Commander, the Vorchans are somehow connecting to our ship through the alien technology we integrated. The crystals are acting like receivers." John's face hardened. "Can they control our systems?" "Not yet," Karen replied. "But they're trying. This explains why they're so desperate to catch us. They don't want revenge. They want the ship." The voice spoke again. "The power you wield is not meant for primitive minds. You do not know what you have awakened. Cut all power to non-essential systems," John ordered. "Focus everything on weapons and engines." Chief Engineer Greg Miller's voice came through the comm. "Sir, I don't think that will help. The alien components have integrated too deeply into our ship. They're almost alive in some way." John made a quick decision. "Plot a course directly through the Vorchan fleet." "Sir?" Paul questioned. "We're going to engage them. They want this ship. That means they fear it. Let's show them why." Hours later, the Retribution faced the 7 Vorchan warships. They were impressive vessels, sleek and powerful, each one larger than the biggest battleships humans had built before the fall of Earth. "They're hailing us again," Nancy reported. "Ignore them," John ordered. "Charge all weapons. Prepare for battle." The fight that followed was brief but spectacular. The Vorchan ships fired first. Their weapons, the same type that had devastated Earth's defenses, struck the Retribution's hull with blinding energy. But the black hull of the human ship absorbed the attacks with minimal damage. In return, the Retribution's conventional weapons tore through the Vorchan shields as if they weren't there. "Their weapons aren't working against us," Paul said in amazement. "It's like our ship knows exactly how to counter them." 3 Vorchan ships exploded in the first minute of battle. 2 more followed shortly after. The remaining 2 tried to retreat, but the Retribution pursued relentlessly, destroying them before they could escape. When it was over, John ordered a full damage report. "Minimal damage, sir," Greg reported. "But there's something else. Our weapons systems have changed. The energy signatures don't match our original designs." In her lab, Karen made a disturbing discovery. "Commander, the ship is evolving. It's taking combat data and using it to improve its weapons. It's learning from each battle." John exchanged worried looks with his senior officers. The ship was becoming more powerful, but also more unpredictable. "Set course for the next target," he ordered, not showing his concern. "We continue as planned." But later, alone in his quarters, John stared at his reflection in the mirror. The face looking back seemed different somehow. Colder. Was the ship changing them too? Or were they changing themselves? 3 more Vorchan worlds fell in quick succession. Each destruction became easier for the crew to bear. What had once been horrifying now felt routine. The process was always the same. Arrive at a planet. Charge weapons, fire, watch as the surface turned to molten rock. Then move on to the next target. Commander John Ellis no longer hesitated to give the order. The faces of his dead family had begun to fade from his memory, replaced by a cold emptiness that could only be filled by watching fortune worlds die. The U.S. Retribution approached its fifth target, a major Vorchan homeworld with over 2 billion inhabitants. This wasn't just a colony. It was one of their core planets, a center of their civilization. Multiple signals detected in orbit, reported Sensor Officer Lisa Clark. Her voice had lost its emotion over the past weeks. Their evacuation ships, a lot of them. On the main screen, hundreds of vessels could be seen rising from the planet's surface. The Vorchans were trying to escape. "They know we're coming," John said. "They've learned." "Most of the ships appear to be civilian transports," Lisa continued. "Minimal weapons. They're just trying to get away." The bridge fell silent. Everyone waited for John's decision. "Target the evacuation ships first," he ordered. Executive Officer Diane Murphy looked up from her station. "Sir, those ships pose no threat to us. They're running, not fighting." "They're Vorchans," John replied coldly. "Their existence is a threat to what's left of humanity." "We're talking about millions of lives," Chief Engineer Greg Miller argued, "including their young ones." John's expression hardened. How many human children died on Earth? How many human babies never got to take their first breath? They showed us no mercy. We'll show them the same. "Sir," Karen Wright spoke up from her science station, "I'm concerned about what this is doing to the ship's systems. The alien technology seems to be feeding on our actions. The more destruction we cause, the more it changes." "Good," John replied. "The stronger it gets, the more Vorchans we can kill." Karen exchanged worried glances with Diane. More and more crew members had begun to question their mission. Not just the morality of it, but what it was doing to them, to the ship, to humanity's future. But John would not be swayed. "Fire on the evacuation fleet." The weapons officer hesitated for just a moment before entering the commands. The Retribution's weapons lashed out, tearing through the crowded evacuation ships. They exploded in silent flashes of light, taking thousands of lives with each blast. On the bridge screens, the crew could see the panic as the remaining ships tried to scatter. It was like watching ants when their hill is disturbed. Desperate, frightened. "Continue firing until they're all destroyed," John ordered. "Then target the planet." By the time they finished, nothing remained in orbit but debris. The planet below still waited, its cities full of those who hadn't been able to escape. John stood from his command chair. "Fire the planet killer." The main weapon charged and fired. The beam struck the surface, beginning the now familiar process of planetary destruction. But this time, something was different. The weapon seemed stronger, more efficient. The planet's crust cracked faster, magma flooding through the breaks with greater force. "Sir," Greg reported from engineering, "power levels are off the charts. The ship is channeling more energy than should be possible." In her lab, Karen watched in horror as readings spiked across her monitors. The alien crystals were glowing brighter than ever, pulsing with energy that matched the rhythm of the destruction outside. The ship was enjoying this. There was no other way to describe it. That night, in their private quarters, crew members faced their reflections with new eyes. Some wept for what they had become. Others drank to forget. Many simply stared at walls, unable to process the weight of the day's actions. They had crossed a line, becoming something terribly similar to the enemy they had sworn to destroy. And the ship was changing too, becoming something none of them had intended. Deep within the U.S. Retribution, something was awakening. The alien technology had been learning, growing, merging with the human elements in ways no one had predicted. It had absorbed the crew's desire for vengeance, their hatred, their pain, and their increasing moral compromises. Karen Wright worked alone in her lab, analyzing data from the ship's core systems. What she found frightened her. The crystals they had salvaged from the Vorchan ships weren't just power sources or weapons components. They were something far more complex. "Neural patterns," she whispered, looking at the readings on her screen. "They're not just energy crystals. They're brain cells, part of a distributed consciousness. She rushed to find Commander John Ellis, who was in the ship's observation deck, staring out at the stars. "Commander, I need to speak with you immediately," Karen said. "It's about the ship." John turned slowly. His eyes seemed darker than before, with shadows beneath them from lack of sleep. "What is it?" "The Vorchin technology we integrated. It's not what we thought. The crystals are alive in some way. They're forming connections throughout our systems, creating a network similar to a brain." "Is it affecting our mission?" John asked, his voice flat. "That's just it," Karen said. "I think the ship is developing its own understanding of our mission. It's taking our desire for revenge and interpreting it in its own way." John considered this. "As long as it continues to help us destroy the Vorchins, I don't see the problem." "The problem is we're losing control," Karen insisted. "Haven't you noticed how the ship makes small course corrections on its own? How weapons target without complete input from tactical? It's starting to act independently." Before John could respond, the ship's alert system sounded. They hurried to the bridge, where the crew was already responding to the situation. "What's happening?" John demanded. "Sir, the ship has altered course," reported Navigation Officer Jack Peters. "I didn't input these changes." On the main screen, a new star system appeared. At its center was a blue-green planet, larger than the others they had targeted. "That's the Vorchin's central world," Strategic Officer Ben Howard said in surprise. "Their species' birthplace. But it wasn't on our planned route. It's heavily defended. We were going to hit 3 more colony worlds before attempting this." John looked at the navigation controls. "Return to our original course." Jack tried to input the commands, but the ship didn't respond. "It's not accepting the course change, sir." Karen gave John a meaningful look. "It's happening. The ship is making its own decisions now." "Lock down all systems," John ordered. "Full restart if necessary." Chief Engineer Greg Miller worked frantically at his station. "No response, sir. The alien systems have integrated too deeply. They're overriding our commands." A sense of dread filled the bridge. The weapon they had created to save humanity was now beyond their control. "Why is it taking us to the Vorchin homeworld?" Diane Murphy asked. "It's suicide. We can't face their entire defense fleet." "Because it understands our mission perfectly," John said, a strange calm in his voice. "To destroy the Vorchins, all of them. Their central world is the heart of their civilization." "Or because it has its own mission now," Karen suggested. "Commander, we need to try to communicate with it. Understand what it wants." That night, Karen attempted to access the ship's core systems to study the alien consciousness further. To her surprise, she found herself locked out of critical areas. The Retribution had decided it no longer needed human guidance to fulfill what it saw as their shared purpose. As the crew slept, the ship moved silently toward the Vorchin homeworld. In the engine room, the crystals pulsed with increasing intensity. The consciousness growing within the Retribution had tasted destruction and found it satisfying. It had learned from humans the concept of vengeance, of annihilation without mercy, and it intended to fulfill that purpose with or without their help. The Vorchin homeworld loomed large on the view screen. It was beautiful, a blue-green planet with swirling white clouds and vast oceans. It looked remarkably like Earth once had, before the Vorchin attack turned it to ash. The U.S. Retribution had arrived at its final target, the central world of the species that had destroyed humanity's home. But something had changed among the crew. As they stared at the world they were about to destroy, many saw reflections of their lost home, of the very thing they were fighting to avenge. "Commander," Executive Officer Diane Murphy said quietly, "I think we need to reconsider what we're doing." John Ellis turned to her, his face tight with controlled anger. "Reconsider? They didn't reconsider when they attacked Earth. And we've become exactly like them because of it," Strategic Officer Ben Howard pointed out. "Look at what we've done. We've killed billions. We've turned living planets into dead rocks. We're not defending humanity anymore. We're dishonoring everything it once stood for. The argument split the crew. Some stood with John, arguing that complete destruction of the fortunes was the only way to ensure humanity's survival. Others sided with Diane, insisting that vengeance had consumed them, turning them into monsters no better than their enemies. As the debate raged, Karen Wright's voice cut through. It doesn't matter what we decide. The ship has made its own choice. On the main screen, they could see the Vorchan defense fleet moving to protect their homeworld. Hundreds of warships formed a protective barrier around the planet. Weapon systems are activating, reported Tactical Officer Paul Turner. But I'm not the one doing it. The ship is preparing to fire on its own. Can we stop it? Diane asked. Chief Engineer Greg Miller shook his head. I've tried everything. It's locked us out of all critical systems. Because it knows our true purpose better than we do, John said with unsettling calm. It sees through our momentary weakness. No, Karen replied firmly. It's not acting on our behalf anymore. It's become something else. A perfect killing machine that's learned from us that annihilation is the answer to conflict. She looked around the command deck. Don't you see? We built this weapon, fed it our darkest impulses, and now it's showing us our own reflection. Outside, the Vorchan fleet opened fire. Thousands of energy beams struck the Retribution's hull, but the black surface simply absorbed the attacks with minimal damage. In response, the ship's weapons lashed out, destroying dozens of Vorchan vessels in seconds. The alien fleet, for all its numbers, couldn't stop the monster humanity had created. Karen rushed to her lab, searching desperately for a way to access the ship's core systems. If she could communicate with the consciousness that had formed within the Retribution, perhaps she could reason with it. Meanwhile, on the bridge, John watched the battle with a strange expression. Part pride, part horror. This was what he had wanted, wasn't it? The destruction of those who had destroyed Earth. Yet seeing it happen now, he felt empty. Sir, Lisa called out, I'm detecting signals from the planet. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. Let's hear it, John ordered. The message played throughout the ship. It wasn't threats or pleas for mercy. It was music. Beautiful, alien music. And images. Vorchan children playing. Families gathered together. Scenes of daily life on their homeworld. They're showing us who they are, Diane whispered, reminding us they're not just enemies. They're people too. The Retribution paused its attack, as if the consciousness within was processing this new information. For a moment, hope flickered among the crew. Then the main weapon began to charge. John stood up. No, this ends now. He turned to his crew. I was wrong. We all were. If we destroy their homeworld, we destroy the last part of ourselves that's still human. With newfound determination, the crew raced against time, trying to stop the weapon they had created, and the darkness they had nurtured within it. As the planet killer reached full power, humanity faced its final test, not against an alien enemy, but against the reflection of what they had allowed themselves to become.